Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining this presentation. Today, we will explore the key regulatory challenges in tissue engineering with special focus on Health Canada and FDA regulations on how combination products are evaluated. And of course, we are going to cover information related to the tissue engineering, and I'm going to go over two case scenarios, two examples as well. Okay, so tissue engineering is a groundbreaking field aimed at regenerating damaged or diseased tissues in the body. So by using cells, biomaterials, and growth factors, scientists can develop functional tissues that can replace damaged organs or tissues. So this is what, of course, you can see on this slide. On the right side, we do have in the middle of the progress in tissue engineering. On the left side, we have the engineered cells. On the right side, we have the engineered materials that we can use as well. And at the bottom, of course, we are looking into, for example, self-assembly, decellularized organs, but also the 3D printing. So very interesting, because this is the future of tissue engineering, and I'm going to talk about the 3D printing as well at the end of this presentation. So let's break down the essential components: cells, scaffolds, and growth factors. That's what you can see on the right side of this slide. Now, cells are foundation for tissue growth. Scaffolds act as the structure, as you see the matrix here, the cell matrix, and growth factors are responsible for stimulating the cells to form new tissues. This is why we may, for example, isolate cells, do some manipulations, and then to inject them into an organ, for example. Or we can also create those cells, the example that I'm going to give in the next slides, for having an artificial skin, which is not artificial skin. This is a tissue that is going to, generate skin cells as well. Now, let's talk also about the combination products in tissue engineering. So, combination products in tissue engineering involve combining two regulated components, so a biologic and a device. This is why when you're looking into the registration, of course, of these combination products, we also have to keep in mind that the product can be a biologic, it can also be a medical device, and of course it can be a combination. Now, for instance, a tissue engineered scaffold may be combined with autologous cells to create a regenerative therapy. Now, these products require a dual approach to regulation to ensure safety and efficacy. Now, acellular dermal matrix and autologous chondrocyte implantation are excellent examples of combination products. So you can see on the left, again, the acellular dermal matrix, or ADM, and on the right side of the slide you can see again a representation of an autologous chondrocyte implantation that involves implanting a patient's own cells onto a scaffold for cartilage or cartilage repair. Okay, now ADM combines biological tissue with a medical device, while ACI combines a patient cell with a scaffold for joint repair. Now, before reaching the market, tissue engineered products undergo rigorous testing, beginning with preclinical studies, moving through clinical trials, and finally undergoing regulatory review by agencies like Health Canada, and FDA. So here on the right side of the slide, we can see all of the regulations again at FDA, and in the middle we see the biologics. So you may say, okay, what is that exactly? When we are going down on this flowchart, and we see that under biologics we have a device biologic, we have 361, and the drug biologic as well. Now, what we understand is that when we are having a device biologic, we will have to go through the pre-market approval or PMA because this is a device. And when we are referring to medical devices classification in the United States of America, we know that we have three classes. Now, similar to FDA, but not identical, in Canada, we do have four classes of devices, and obviously we also have device biologic. We also have drug biologic, as we see, and in this case, if they are only drugs and they are not combined with any device, in this case they are going to go through the registration process through the new drug application in the US or through the new drug submission by Health Canada in Canada. This is why we will need to have an investigational new drug, because this is a biologic but as a drug. Then we are going, of course, to go over the investigations. Now we also have another topic which is related to the public health services regulations 361 for FDA. So what is that exactly? Biologics 361 refers to a category of human cell and tissue products, we call that HCT/PS, regulated under Section 361 of the Public Health Service Act by the FDA, meaning they are minimally manipulated, intended for homologous use, it means replacing like tissue with like tissue, and considered to pose minimal risk to public health, requiring less stringent regulatory oversight compared to other biologics under Section 351 that we are going to see in the next slide. Now here we are going to see again the process that starts with laboratory research and animal testing, so followed by clinical trials to evaluate human safety. So the product then goes through rigorous regulatory review before it can be registered for use. So I already talked about Biologics 351. This is again the one that I'm going to invite you to look at the bottom of the picture on the right side of the slide, where we are underneath the U.S. Food and Drugs and Cosmetics Act. We are talking about U.S. Public Health Service Act, or PHSA. Now in PHSA, we talk about biologic license application, or standalone 351A. But we also talk about biosimilar BLA 351K, and again, this can be interchangeable. Now, what is Biologics 351? We already saw Biologics 361, where it doesn't need that much manipulation and it has a very low safety issue. Now, Biologics 351 refers to a biologic product regulated under Section 351 of the Public Health Service Act, which essentially means it's a drug or therapy derived from living organisms like viruses, blood components, or antibodies, and is subject to strict FDA oversight for its safety and efficacy when used to prevent, treat, or cure human diseases. Essentially, it's a classification for a specific type of biologic medication under FDA regulations. Hence, we understand that for this type of products, Biologics 351, we will need to go through an investigation on new drug and obviously going through the new drug application. Now, preclinical testing is essential to ensure that tissue-engineered products are safe before entering human clinical trials. This phase evaluates the biological behavior and potential risk of the product in controlled environments. Now, what you can see on the left side of the slide is just, again, a picture related to the flow of the, I would say, depth of research. And of course, we can start by looking into, again, tissue engineering in drosophils or in fly. We can also look into more complex organisms like the zebrafish or frogs like Grisonopus. And then we can now look into more complex animal models that are, again, more close to, I would say, to primates and, of course, to humans. And here we talk about rabbits and rodents. So preclinical testing assesses the safety, biological activity, and cytotoxicity of tissue-engineered products, and this includes in vitro tests and animal studies to ensure that the product will function as intended without causing harm. Now, clinical trials are critical to provide and to prove, of course, that a tissue-engineered product is both safe and effective. That's why we go over phase 1 that ensure safety, and phase 2 for testing efficacy, and phase 3 for confirming the benefits of the product on a larger scale. So clinical trials progress through 3 phases, as we already talked about. Phase 1 related to safety and dosage, phase 2 for evaluating the product's efficacy and side effects or adverse drug reactions, and phase 3 that involves a large-scale testing to confirm the product's effectiveness and monitor adverse reactions. Now, FDA approval requires either a 510K clearance for similar devices or pre-market approval for high-risk products. So the process can take months or even years, depending on the complexity of the product. So what we can see again in the picture on the right side of the slide is that we are having 3 different classes. We are talking about FDA, of course, classification of medical devices. And here we can see where is the, again, the place for the application 510K. And of course, we also have de novo or 510K de novo, but we also have for class 3 the pre-market application. Now we see that when we are dealing with engineered tissues, we are dealing mainly with class 2 and class 3 medical devices. Now the FDA approval process varies for different products, as we can see. The 510K clearance is used for devices that are substantially equivalent to existing products, while pre-market approval or PMA is required for high-risk products that need clinical trial evidence to demonstrate safety. Now, for combination products, the FDA evaluates both the biologic and device components. This means that products like tissue-engineered scaffolds combined with cells must go through a complex regulatory process involving both biologic and device review. So, as I mentioned, FDA evaluates combination products through a two-pronged approach. Both biologic and device components may be subject to different regulatory pathways, such as IND or investigational new drug / BLA or biologic license application for biologics, and IDE or investigational device exemption / PMA or pre-market application for devices. And this is what we can see in the picture on the right side of the slide. Now, under the Section 361 of the PHS Act, products like minimally manipulated tissue products that are used for homologous purposes are regulated with less strict requirements because they need less manipulation. Again, so it's less strict requirements than biologics, but still need to demonstrate safety and effectiveness. So what you can see underneath, in I would say the picture on the right side is the CGTP. This is the abbreviation standing for Current Good Tissue Practices, like good clinical practice, good for current good clinical practice, current good manufacturing practice. We also have current good tissue practice. Now the 361 PHS Act regulates minimally manipulated human cells, tissues, and cellular based products intended for homologous use. These products are not subject to the same rigorous requirements as biologics, but they must still meet safety standards. Now, products that are significantly altered or used for non-homologous purposes fall under IND, BLA, or Investigational New Drug / Biological License Application Regulation, which involves more extensive clinical trials compared to the simpler 361 PHS Act process. So at the bottom, I would say left side of this slide, we can see, for example, that in the table at the bottom, that we can see that we have, again, manufacturing that who should adhere to 21 CFR Part 210 to 11, which is for drug regulations. But we see that for minimally manipulated cells, manufacturers, they don't need to adhere to 21 CFR Part 210 or 211. However, for manufactured cells, like again the 351, based on the section 351, manufacturers cells, they need manufacturers to adhere to 21 CFR Part 210. And what is interesting is that it's not just for CFR, again, 210 or 211. I invite you, of course, to look into the CFRs by going to the website ecfr.gov in order to have access to all of the, again, laws, again, in the USA. And, of course, you have to go to Title 21 and then to find 21 is the title, and then to go to the parts 210 and 211. Now, coming back to minimally manipulated cells or manufactured cells, if they are minimally manipulated, then they are not subject to clearance by regulatory bodies such as FDA, EMA, PMDA, Health Canada. Now they don't need to have randomized control clinical trials. And they don't need safety and efficacy data prior to use. However, if we are dealing with engineered tissue that are manufactured cells for the cell therapies, we will need to have a clearance by regulatory bodies. We need to have randomized clinical trials, and we require safety and efficacy data prior to use. So while the 361 PHS Act applies to minimally manipulated tissue products, more complex engineered tissues fall under IND BLA. So we need to do clinical trials. And of course, we have to follow the regulations related to the BLA application, which require clinical trials and extensive safety data to support approval. For devices like scaffolds in tissue engineering, the FDA requires an IDE or investigational device exemption for clinical trials and a pre-market authorization or PMA for market approval. This process ensures that devices are safe and effective before being used in patients. So what we can see on the right side of the slide, we can see again four different columns. One of them is pre-IDE, so pre-investigational device exemptions, where we are going to assess and establish the device design. We are going to perform bench testing. We are going to perform animal testings as well as clinical trials. And then when we are going to, again, apply for the investigational drug exemption, we are going to make a request for approval for clinical trials in humans. And then we will need to go through the PMA pathway where we are going to request a market approval. And then, of course, we are going to go over the request approval for device change or upgrade. It may require a new IDE. And PMAS is, of course, for the supplementary or any change that is made to the device. Now, devices like scaffolds used in tissue engineering are subject to the investigational device exemption, as I already mentioned, and to pre-market approval process. So the IDE allows clinical trials to be conducted, and PMA requires evidence of safety and efficacy through clinical data. Now let's talk about Health Canada and the regulatory review of the engineered tissues by Health Canada. So Health Canada regulates, medical devices, biologics, and combination products. Tissue engineered products must comply with regulations set by the Medical Device Regulation or MDR and the Biologics Regulation under the Food and Drugs Act of Canada. Now, on December 16, 2022, Health Canada issued a notice to stakeholders regarding their proposal to amend the regulation for biologic drugs. This is Schedule D drugs in Division 4, Part C of the Food and Drugs Regulations. Now, we understand that similar to FDA, Health Canada oversees tissue engineered products, and it regulates devices under the Medical Device Regulation and biologics under the Biologics Regulation. Now, in Canada, scaffolds and biomaterials used for tissue engineering are classified as medical devices under the Medical Devices Regulations. These regulations ensure that products are both safe and effective before they can be marketed. So what you can see on the picture on the right side of the slide is the Food and Drugs Act of Canada, where underneath we have the Food and Drugs Regulations, we have Medical Devices Regulations, and we have Safety of Cells, Tissues, and Organs for Transplantation Regulations. So any regulatory affairs professional will need to consult the Food and Drugs Act of Canada and then to look into the pathway that he or she needs to follow depending on the type of, scaffolds and biomaterials. Now, in conclusion for this slide, Health Canada's medical device regulation apply to devices used in tissue engineering, such as scaffolds and biomaterials. So these regulations ensure that medical devices meet safety, effectiveness, and quality standards before being marketed. Now, for tissue engineered products containing biological components like cultured cells, Health Canada uses the biologics regulation, which are similar to the FDA IND/BLA system. Products must undergo clinical trials and demonstrate safety and efficacy. So, in addition to biologics regulation, Health Canada also wrote a guidance document that we can see the cover on the right side of the slide, where the guidance document is on the safety of human cells, tissues, and organs for transplantation regulation. This is one of the regulations that is being used. So, in a nutshell, tissue engineered products involving biological components such as cultured cells are regulated in Canada as biologics. So these are subject to biologics regulations and require a new drug submission or NDS or Biologic License Application or BLA equivalent. Now let's talk about combination products. Combination products in Canada, just like in the US, are subject to both medical device and biologics regulations. These regulations ensure that both components of the product are assessed for safety and efficacy. So in the table that we can see on the left side of the slide, we can see 4 columns. First column being the combination product, the second being the components, the third being the regulatory pathway, and the fourth being the examples. Now, for the first class or type of combination product, we can talk about drug-eluting stents. Now, the components are a drug and a medical device, a stent. The regulatory pathway is a device or biologics, and examples are, for example, again, Xeon's 5 or Promus Premier or Resolute or Integrity. Now, we can also have another type of combination products, such as wearable insulin pump. What are the components? A drug and a medical device. What is the regulatory pathway? Device or biologics, and you have the examples such as Medtronic MiniMed 670G, etc. Another type of combination product is combination vaccines. So here we are having multiple vaccines that are combined. So here these are biologics, like for example the measles, mumps, rubella, varicella vaccine or MMRV. Another type of combination product can be a drug device inhalers. What are the components? The drug and the medical device. Now, what is the regulatory pathway? Is through the device or biologics. And an example is Advair Discus or Symbicort. The last type of combination product can be a drug-coated balloons. Now, what are the components again? Drug and medical device. What is the regulatory pathway for the registration of this combination product is the device, and the example is of course Impact, Admiral or Ranger. Now we understand that the combination products involving both devices and biologics are also regulated by Health Canada, and these products require compliance with both the medical device regulations and biologics regulations in Canada, and their approval involves a more complex process than for single component products. Now, once tissue engineered products hit the market, they undergo continuous monitoring for long-term safety and performance. Now, adverse events are reported to regulatory authorities, and products may be subject to additional studies in order to be able to stay on the market. So what we can see on the slide on the right side is just again another representation of again the evaluation or I would say the post-market surveillance. And we see that when we are having a product, and not only again a medical device as it is illustrated here, but also a drug, when we see that there is any safety concern, it may trigger a CAPA or corrective and preventive action if this is related to a non-conformity of the product because of a deficiency. But it's also, again, staying vigilant. So staying always looking into collecting, assessing, reporting, and preventing adverse reactions. Now, adverse drug reactions or adverse reactions due to the use of medical devices. Now, we also know that in addition to post-market surveillance, we also conduct clinical trials. We call those clinical trials post-market clinical follow-ups. Sometimes these are conditions for the registration of a product, and sometimes companies, or again based on the post-market surveillance results, we are going to see that regulatory authorities are also going to ask a company to perform additional, again, non-clinical or clinical trials as well. Now, we understood that after regulatory approval, tissue engineered products undergo post-market surveillance to monitor their long-term safety and effectiveness. We also understood that this includes adverse events reporting and ongoing studies to identify potential risk not observed during clinical trials. Now, safety monitoring doesn't end with clinical trials. Real-world performance is tracked through registries and follow-up studies to detect any long-term side effects or failure not seen during the trial phases. So what we can see on the picture on the right side of the slide is related to this ongoing I would say safety monitoring, where we go over the clinical evaluations. We also go through the post-market surveillance. We are going to collect and assess and report and prevent adverse reactions or any type of deficiency experienced by, again, the patients. And then we are always having what we call a risk management strategy, where we are going to learn from the market, learn from the safety reports, and we are now going to look into whether or not a batch has some deficiency, or if the design of a device is not appropriate or adequate, or again the quality of again a biologic, for example, is adulterated because of some reasons. But all of these are going to allow us to improve our process, improve the quality, and reduce the risk of using those products. So we understood that monitoring extends beyond clinical trials and involves continuous tracking of the product's performance in real-world scenarios. This may involve patient registries, follow-up studies, and ongoing safety assessments when we are on the market. Now let's go over some case studies. We're going to see two case studies. In this slide here, we are talking about Apligraf. Now, it's a tissue-engineered skin substitute. It's a great example of how combination products are used in medicine. It's a biologic device combination that has helped treat chronic wounds and burns, as you can see in the picture on the right side of the slide. So this is an example of a successfully regulated tissue-engineered product. It's a bioengineered skin substitute approved by FDA, and it's used for treating chronic wound and burns, combining living cells with a biocompatible scaffold. So it's a combination product. Another case study that I chose is about the autologous chondrocyte implantation, or ACI, which is a promising tissue engineering technique used to repair the cartilage. This procedure combines a biologic component. This is it's autologous, so it's coming from the patient's cells, with a device component, which is a scaffold, which requires dual regulatory approval. So this is what you can see in the picture on the left side of this slide. Now, autologous chondrocyte implantations is another example of a tissue-engineered product. It's a combination product, and it involves harvesting a patient's cartilage, as you can see in the picture, culturing them, and then implanting them back to repair damaged cartilage. Now, tissue engineering raises significant ethical issues as well. Informed consent is crucial to have, particularly when using stem cells or genetic modifications. Ensuring that all patients have equitable access to these technologies is another important consideration as well. Now, in the picture on the right side, we can see that on the top we have the regulatory body with their responsibilities. It means they have to always assess the risk and benefit making sure that the well-being of the population is always preserved. Now, here we have the example of 3D printing, for example. And what we can see is that we do have several ethical considerations. These are all engineered, of course, tissues, but we need to make sure that the product is safe. We need to explain to the patients what is going to be done with the patient. And then we need to get the informed consent as well. So before getting the informed consent, we have to have established the risks and benefits of the treatment so that we can explain those to the patient. So once we have the informed consent, we are going to go with the therapy. However, we also have societal and cultural and of course even justice involvement as well, because now we may be manipulating or using some engineered tissue that may affect the way that people are going to perceive that therapy. Now sometimes we have people who cannot accept because of their values and beliefs. So these are talking about the set of moral values constituting the ethics that who may not be again able to accept this type of tissue engineering as well. So we have to look into ethical considerations as well. Now, we understood that ethical concerns in tissue engineering involve informed consent, equitable access to the therapy, and genetic manipulations when applicable. So these concerns are particularly important when using stem cells or genetically modified organisms in the creation of engineered tissues. Now, what's the future of tissue engineering? The future of tissue engineering is incredibly exciting. Technologies like 3D bioprinting, gene editing, and personalized medicine will allow us to create customized tissues and organs for individual patients, providing hope for a range of disease and injuries. So in the picture on the right, we can look into how we are going to perform a cartilage repair. First, we are going to do the extrusion of the cells, cartilage cells. We are going to use those cells as an inkjet in a 3D printer, and then we are going to go what we call that stereolithography, where it's going to allow us to do the 3D printing using cells in order to make those cartilages with a specific shape. Now, advancements in 3D bioprinting, gene editing, and personalized medicine promise to revolutionize the field of tissue engineering. So these technologies have the potential to create highly specific tissues for individual patients, and of course they are leading to better outcomes. Now, in conclusion, tissue engineering offers immense potential for treating a variety of disease and injuries. However, navigating the complex regulatory landscape, including FDA and Health Canada processes, is crucial for ensuring that these products are safe, effective, and accessible, and obviously being used considering all of the ethical points. It's important that we never forget ethics when we are in medicine and when we are using therapies. Thank you so much again for your attention. I hope that you're all going to have a great day. Thank you.